Okay, we continue in Shmuel Aleph. I believe we finished Pasuk Lamed, right? I believe we finished Pasuk Lamed. We discussed how in the midst of battle, as the Jews drove away the Plishtim, they were very hungry and very tired, yet Shul made a decree that no one should eat and until they finish off the Plishtim. Yonasan was not there when that decree was made, and he tasted a little bit of honey. And when somebody pointed that out to Yonasan, that he didn't listen to his father's decree, so Yonasan responded to that, and he basically said, I took a little bit and I felt so much better. Can you imagine if everybody would have eaten a little bit, how much more successful we'll be against the Plishtim? And we said that from the Ralbag that Yonasan sinned in many different ways. First of all, he was criticizing his father. Second, he wasn't allowing the battle to be miraculously saved by Kadosh Baruch Hu. And number three, he can't plead such ignorance that he didn't know, because after all, he should have checked out and seen that nobody else was eating. And how come nobody was eating and only he was the one that was eating? So these are all things he should have done, which really is, for a tzaddik like Yonasan, would be considered a sin. Anyway, let's continue with the war and the story. Lamed Aleph. Vayaku bayom hahu baplishtim mimichmash ayolona vayoaf ha'amod. And Bayomahu, notice this, Bayomahu, on that day, they hit the Plishtim from Michmash until the valley of Ayalon. And Vayoaf ha'am ma'od, and the nation was very fatigued. Okay, before it said they were fatigued. When the guy responded to him and said, listen, Shul made us swear, etc., etc., and the people were fatigued, right? But then they continued, the battle continued, they were very, very fatigued. Now, we'll have to see. Now, Ayalon, by the way, is in the portion of Dan, which is in the... so he's... Malbim said, we know that Shevet Dan is north, it's very north, and also it is west of the boundary of the Plishtim. So they were very tired. Now, when people get very tired, they're apt to make mistakes. If you drive people to the point where they're very tired, then you make honest mistakes, but mistakes still they are. Pasuk Lamed Beis. Now, you have a Kri and a Ksiv. It's written Vaya'as, but we read it Vaya'at. Ha'am El Hashalol Vayikhu Tzonu Bakar Bnei Bakar Vayishchutu Artza Vayochel Ha'am Al Adam. Right, so this is a very very important pasuk. Vaya'at is explained by the commentators. All the commentators have a little thing to say on this. Vaya'at, they say, is like idea of a pricha, like flowering, budding. And they say that's an expression of doing things quickly. In other words, they acted quickly. That's what the Metzudah says. Ralbag says that Vaya'at means they turned away. In other words, they were on a path of chasing after the Plishtim. Now they turned away to go to the spoils. Radak learns it's an expression of gathering together. And you could say all three pshatim. They gathered together by veering off the path and did it in a very quick way. Okay, and who mentions about the ksiv? Even though, and so first the Radak says it means to turn away, turns away. But the fact that's what vaya'at means. But the fact that the ksiv is vayas, which that would hint to an idea of gathering together. So in other words, they did it together, and they gathered together, they went off, and they did something very quickly, and we see at the end of the pasuk they did something very wrong. as they're gathering up the loot, they take sheep and cattle, ubnei bakar, and young cattle. They slaughtered it to the ground, whatever that means, and the people ate al hadam, on the blood. So what is it that they did over here? So there's a lot of different commentaries over here. On the words, they took sonu bakar, ubnei bakar, they took sheep and cattle and the children of the cattle. He said over here, what they did was they disregarded, transgressed the negative commandment that a person not allowed to slaughter an animal and its child on the same day. Bakar ubnei bakar, cattle and the children of the cattle. So they were in such a rush, they weren't discriminating, and we'll see in a minute that is the sin that they did. Then Rashi brings down from Chazal, from the Gemara in Tzvachim, that they made these animal offerings as shlomim, as peace offerings. And with a shlomim, you have to sprinkle the blood on a mizbeach. And therefore it says, Vayochel ha'am al hadam, the people ate on the blood. Meaning to say, they were eating kachim while there was still blood that needed to be sprinkled. And there was no mizbeach, didn't help the matter any. So I guess they wanted to, this wasn't regular meat they were eating. They wanted to thank God, make a korban out of it. But they made a korban, but they didn't sprinkle any blood. Again, you could be sure, what they really needed to do was to build a bama, to build a mizbeach. And they were so hungry, they just wanted to get that animal. So they shechted the animal, they roasted it quickly, and their only thing in mind was to eat. They were so hungry. The Radak learns is that they shechted on a flat surface, and the blood didn't have anywhere to run off, and therefore the blood reabsorbed into the animals, and then they transgressed the avera of eating blood. Usually we salt the animal and all the blood drains off, and here they didn't. The blood came back into the animals, and they drank and they ate an animal that had blood, which that's really the prohibition the Torah tells us about. Ralbag learns, very interesting, he says it seems to be there was an idolatrous practice of people slaughtering an animal and eating the meat in proximity of the blood. When you're eating meat in proximity of the blood, that is an idolatrous practice. Be that as it may, you have a number of things that could have been what they did wrong, if not all of these things. So a question has to be asked at this point in time, why is this going on over here? So I think it's pretty obvious what's going on over here. First of all, we know, and this is the theme of Shul throughout his life. The King Shul was a very holy man. In that area of holiness, you couldn't touch him. He was really a very holy person. But as a king, he would have one more important job that he always had trouble doing. The job of the king is to draw the nation to Hashem. To draw them to Hashem. That's what part of being a king is all about. And Shul, even though for his own part he was very controlled, he was very restrained. He's from Shevet Binyamin, that's the descendants of Leah. A lot of modesty, a lot of ability to control himself against Taiva and things like that. He really was a tzaddik. His big mistake was he expected everyone to be on his high level of tzidkus, on his high level of precious, being able to stay away from Taiva, to be in the same level as him. And as a king, you got to realize, and that's what Shmuel reminded him from the first day when he told him what kind of people you're going to meet. And as we went with the Malbim, he was explaining what kind of people will be your constituency. And most of your constituency is not as firm as you are, and will never be as firm as you are. You're supposed to pull them closer to Hashem as best you can, but they will not be who you are. And that's we'll see later on. We see Gemara clearly says it regarding another sin of Shalmach, where they say to him, Al tehi tzadik harbe, don't be such a big tzaddik. In other words, it also means don't try to impose your tzidkus, your righteousness, on others to be on your level. So therefore, what was he doing? He was driving them to fast and fast and fast. And you could take it, you're tired. Continue. I can do it. But they, so they were pushed beyond the limit. And then all of a sudden, he should have thought, they're just regular guys. Can't they taste a little bit of honey? Give them a couple chocolate bars. Okay, don't sit down and make a whole meal. Yeah. But no, we have to be holy. We have to show this is all for Hashem. It's all this. It's good for you, Shul. It might be good for a few people. But you have to remember, just a couple hours ago, everybody ran scared. You have people who've been so afraid they joined the Plishtim.
Isn't that what Jonathan said after? Didn't he say the same thing? Let them eat something, there will be more cost. So why was that a sin for Jonathan? And now he's saying this.
Okay, well, we'll come to Jonathan in a minute. But the point we're trying to make here is that really, at the end of the day, Shul, in spite of his wonderful intentions, but he drove them to fast to the point that they did Averos. So at the end of the day, what did you gain? Fasting before war, we would call that a midas chasidus. It's an act of piety, an act of tzidkus. Nowhere in the Torah is there a law that you must fast on a war. There's no law as such. It's a good practice. It's a good practice. You should do tshuva. It's a good thing to do, no question about it. And they did it.
And they were successful.
And they were successful, but now, you've driven them away. You want to continue the battle? Well, it's been a hard day. Let them eat a little bit, and then let them go on. And then you went and imposed an extra fast for them, which was like beyond what they would be able to handle. So now, because you want them to be really big tzaddikim, right? And the fact that Yonasan, who was a very big tzaddik himself, he understood how important it would be to have just a little something to eat, right? So instead of them being super frum, what happens is they go into blatant averos, and not because they were terrible people, but you drove them to starving to such a point where you start to lose your mind. Unfortunately, you see things when people, hunger is a terrible, terrible thing. People, you don't act like a normal person when you're starving. And he drove them to that point. Now, if you're a real tzaddik, a real tzaddik can fast 40 days in a row till he'll see Eliyahu Navi. Okay, these weren't such tzaddikim. So he drove them to that point. Now, in spite of that, Yonasan, no matter what his correct ideas were, when he was told by one of the other fellows that your father made a decree, right? He said your father made an oath. Whatever your feelings were, you should have kept it to yourself. He should have just said, I didn't hear.
But he said that.
Well, not really.
He said, I didn't know about it. Number one and number two.
He didn't really say it. He didn't really say it. And but how did he respond to the criticism? He should have just said, I don't know. Instead of that, he had to criticize his father. Even if his criticism is correct, that's a deficiency in Kibbutz.
That was bad.
More than that, he's not just your father, he's the king. You see, you just should have said, I didn't know about it. You don't find anywhere in his answer where he said, my father damaged the people, right? Look how much better it is now that I've eaten something, right? He did not say, I did not know. He did not say that. That should have been the simple answer. I didn't know. He didn't tell me. Finished. And we'll deal with it. So then he's critical of his father and everything else. And could be, maybe Yonasan, who was on the level of his father, should have, so it could be, maybe Yonasan read would have been a better king than his father. In other words, realized, you can't drive the people this way. But still, in spite of all what you could be better than your father, you cannot, as they say, diss your father.
What about the reliance on Hashem's providence? That was the whole point of Shaul. Because he said, let's complete this because Hashem is helping us.
Okay, so
that's the reason he did it.
I understand, but you have to know your people. You can't drive people. The fact is, you have to know where they're coming from and how far you can drive them. And it was enough they fasted for the main battle. And a miracle happened. Fine. So now they're starving. Go let them eat. No. We have to be bigger, tzaddikim. No, they can't handle this level. You have to. The biggest problem with a tzaddik is he can't understand how other people can't be a tzaddik. He can't understand. He says, what do you mean?
Sure.
Don't you feel dveikus to Hashem? Don't you feel happy? you don't understand. Being a tzaddik. First of all, for him to be a tzaddik is amazing, but then to be a tzaddik and to lead other people the way they need to be led. It's like look who he's dealing with compared to who he is. Who's he dealing with? A bunch of quote unquote losers. But they're not. That's who they are. That's what that's how they've developed. He has to guide them with patience and, certainly give them what to aspire towards. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that they're not going to be able to reach the levels that you would want them to reach. And maybe if you do it slowly and slowly, maybe, they'll be the best that they can be. These were people who not long ago wanted a king so they would be freed from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So let's take it slowly. But he didn't take it slowly. He drove them to the edge. And because of that, they do an affair. And we'll see, we'll continue, we'll see that more faults of Shul come out over here, even though things end up okay. You have to remember that Shul himself was guilty of the fact that he didn't wait 7 days till the end of the 7th day to bring the korban. It's also interesting if you notice what name is missing throughout this story at this point in time. Shmuel. He's not in the whole parak. You won't find his name at all. It's like Shmuel's kind of said, "Listen, you've already blown it, man. Son, I'm really not involved over here." And it's interesting. Like, shouldn't Shul now that you can understand now why Shul's making his mistakes, because he doesn't have anybody to ask. He unilaterally made this decree to fast. Maybe if Shmuel was there, he would have asked him for an eitzah, give me some advice, because Shmuel wasn't around. So, as much as, wow, it's a great opportunity for us to be as firm as we can be and to get as close as we can, I'm going to make this special decree. You know what? Look how it backfires on you. And let's continue and see.
Why wasn't Shmuel around? Isn't that his fault too? He should have been around.
Well, Shmuel already said, you've messed it up.
So that's it. He gave up on him.
That's how he ended it up.
Yeah, I know, but he gave up on him.
He gave him this warning. Well, he'll give him another chance, but he says this battle already is not going to be the way that it should be. He says you acted foolishly. Your kingdom is not going to last.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, I have nothing to do with this battle anymore. You've not been listening to Hashem, so I can't be involved. You'll have to do it on your own. It's pretty harsh. It's pretty harsh. All right, let's continue. Lamed Gimel. So what happens when Shul finds out? It was told to Shul, saying, "Behold, the lower people, right? Doesn't mean necessarily everybody was. Remember, they're all called Ha'am. Nation is usually not such a praiseworthy term. It's more the masses, the lower people. So behold, your people that are sinning to Hashem, eating on the blood, whatever interpretation you want to take. Vayomer, and he said, Begatem, you have betrayed. Golu Elai Hayom Evan Gedola. Let us roll today a large stone. Okay. So the Begatem, the Bible says you've rebelled, meaning again in this area of Kachim. He says, they have sinned in this area of Kachim, and let us bring a big rock. So we'll see, this rock is meant to correct the problems that the Jews showed. So for example, according to the one interpretation, that they didn't sprinkle blood on a mizbeach. So let's make this rock to become a mizbeach. A bama, which they're allowed to have because the Mishkan didn't have a permanent place. There was no place for the blood to drain off. This rock will be the place where the blood will drain off. You can't have blood in your proximity, so guess what? This bowl will be a separation between the blood on one side and the animals on the other side. So in other words, let's fix the problem. Lamed Dalet. Vayomer Shul, and Shul said, Pupshu va'am, spread out word to the people. V'amartam, and say to them, Hagishu elai, bring to me, Ish shor v'ish siehu. Each man should bring his ox or his sheep. Ushchatem bazeh, and shecht it with this. V'achaltem and eat. V'lo sechatol Hashem lechol adam, and don't sin to Hashem by eating on the blood. Vagishu chalam ish shara biyado halayla. So each man brought his ox in his hand that night. Vayishchatu sham, and they sacrificed the animals over there. Okay, so in other words, so in a way that the problem was resolved.
Correct.
He corrected the problem. In other words, he solved the problem. He corrected right away. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Pasuk Lamed Hey. And then what does he do? Vayiven Shol Mizbech LaHashem. Shol builds a Mizbech for Hashem. Also Heichel Livnos Mizbech Hashem. That is the one that he began to build a Mizbech for Hashem. So this is a very difficult pasuk as well. What's the idea of Hu Heichel? He began. When he began, it almost implies he was the first one to build a Mizbech, as if nobody else ever built a Mizbech before, which we know is not true. So what does it mean he began? So Malum says that he began. He began it in the beginning. In other words, when they first were going to start eating, he began to build it, but everyone was in such a rush to eat. It kind of they were eating before he finished the Mizbech. So he built a Mizbech, the very same one he was beginning to build, but the people were eating before he was able to finish the building of the Mizbech. That's one interpretation. That's from the Malbim. The Radak says that he began, meaning to say, he was the first king to do it. First Jewish king to do it. Now, of course, he was the first Jewish king. So we have to add from other commentaries to say, like, if you look during the entire times of the Shoftim, there was nobody who really built a Mizbech for Hashem. In terms of a Jewish leader, he was the first one to build a Mizbech for Hashem. Even though you'll find that there were others who did, Gidon and others may have done it, but they only did it for themselves. They brought a korban, not that the whole Jewish people should do it. So he built a Mizbech to show thanksgiving to Hashem, and he encouraged everyone else to be part of that. In which we all will bring korbanos. In other words, instead of just eating, see, Shul had great ideas here. He says, listen, you're hungry, so you know what we're going to do now that we're so hungry? Again, he's frumming them out. Right? We're so hungry, so what, if normally you're hungry, shech and eat it. No, I'm going to shech it and bring a korban to thank Hashem. And then once we've thanked Hashem, then we can eat it. These guys were starving. It's not time for that. Right? He wanted to get them all to realize and appreciate Hashem. To that, you went too extreme, went too overboard. You're not going to help. So, but that now we're seeing what his motives ultimately were: to be the one, to be the first leader, to get everybody to involved in bringing korbanos, right? This is his, this is really his first kingly act, as it were, to get Hashem involved, as Hashem would want it, and to draw Jews there. But, as they say, too little too late, or perhaps a wrong time. So as much as he wanted to be the best king he could be, with all good intentions, he just was pushing them too far. So instead of being able to make a great Kiddush Hashem, unfortunately it was a Chilul Hashem. That's what happens when you want to push people beyond what they're capable of taking. So that is what we see in these psukim over here. Okay, Lamed Vav. So now they've eaten, they're refreshed, but they still haven't totally finished off the Plishtim. So Vayomer Lamed Vav, Vayomer Shol. So Shol says, Ner dachrei Plishtim laila. Let us chase after the Plishtim now at night. V'navoz alahem, and we shall loot them at Or HaBoker until the morning rises, till the light of the morning. Lo nasher bohem ish. So there won't be any men left of them. Let's get rid of these Plishtim once and forever. Vayomer, and all the people said, Kol hatov beinecha, say, whatever's good in your eyes, let's do. But Baruch Hashem, Vayomer HaKohen, but the Kohen who was with them, remember, the Kohen was with them, he said, maybe Nikrava Halom El Halokim, maybe we should come close to Hashem, maybe we should ask the Urim V'Tumim and see if we should be going to battle. Before, when you wanted to ask, but you didn't have time because you saw that the disarray of the Plishtim was so great, we just had to move. Okay, no problem. We had to do because there had to be a battle. But now you've kind of chased them away. Now you want to finish them off. Well, we should be asking Hashem to see if we should do this, right? See, because Shol felt that this was the moment. It's time now to get rid of the Plishtim. So all that, and the Plishtim are totally defeated. It's just a question of looting them and just finishing off the job. What I got to ask the Urim V'Tumim for? Well, the Kohen said, no. How do you know? Maybe they've already regathered themselves. Maybe they'll collect themselves. Like the second half of a football game. You could have one half, one team's destroying the team. All of a sudden they regroup. Second half they come fighting back. So how do you know that? Maybe they're just running. Maybe they've gathered in a place. You're going to fight them again. They're going to be ready for you now. It's going to say, how can we let 3,000 guys do this test? What kind of trick did they do? We're more than them. We shouldn't be afraid. So, this might not be such a good idea. Okay? Shul showed respect. That's what the Kohen Gadol said. Okay? Not a bad idea. So, Lamed Zayin. Vayishal Shul be'Elokim. So Shul asked Hashem, Ha'irei acharei Plishtim? Should I go down after the Plishtim? Hasitneim biyad Yisrael? Will you give them over into the hands of the Jewish people? V'lo anahu bayomahu. And Hashem did not answer him on that day. Urim V'Tumim didn't say yes, didn't say no, didn't say anything, which is worse than a no. No is also an answer, but no answer means there's something very bad going on over here. Shul immediately understood there's something extremely bad going on over here. No such thing that Hashem doesn't answer you, even to say a no. So he understood that there's major things wrong over here. Lamed Ches. Vayomer Shul. So Shul says, Goshu halom kol pinos om. Bring close to over here all the different corners of the people. In other words, I want everybody here. Udu'u uru'u, and you should know and we should see. Bama hoisa hachatos asosayom. For what reason was this sin today? In other words, he knew there had to be a very recent Avera, and because of this recent Avera, Hashem isn't answering. It couldn't have been something from months and months and months ago, because Hashem has done an amazing miracle today. And there was a sin just after the miracle. Because otherwise they would have lost the battle. If they went to battle with a big Avera, they wouldn't have won. The fact that Hashem's not answering must have been a very recent Avera. With what was there a sin right now, today? And what about the fact that all your troops were doing all these different Averas? So he wasn't concerned about that because he corrected that right away. Something he knew about, something he corrected. Right? So he's trying to find out what's going on over here. So he continues. Lamates ki chay Hashem Moshiach Yisrael kim yeshno beyonasan b'ni ki mos yumos. He said, I swear by the one who delivers Yisrael, by Hashem. I swear by Hashem, was deliver the Jewish people, that if we find a sinner, even if he would be my own son Yonasan, he shall surely be put to death. Now he didn't know what Yonasan did, right? Again, big mistake. Big mistake. He was, this ve'eno nehu mikalam, and nobody answered from the people. People knew what was going on. People knew that Yonasan ate. Some did for sure. The one guy who saw Yonasan, man, you always got to remember, you're not dealing with the highest class people over here. You're not dealing with tzaddikim. When this guy saw Yonasan eat, and Yonasan criticized his father, you don't think he told some other guys, and other guys told other guys. And what were they basically saying? I guess the king's son is above the law. Right? They're too busy fighting and thising and thating and celebrating their victory. But that was probably spreading. King's son thinks he's above the law. So, they're not saying anything. There's mixed feelings over here, as you'll see. But Shul definitely spoke out of turn. And the Malm elaborates. He says, and even if it would be Yonasan, and even though he was the vehicle for our salvation, because he realized that Yonasan went and started the attack, right? But he's saying even he would have to die. Now, what would go through Shul's logic for that to be? Because if Hashem does show so much hashgacha for you, show so much help and divine assistance, so therefore, if you sin, the anger to Hashem to such a person will be so much greater. Because the greatness of the sin depends on the greatness of the sinner. Right? And therefore, even if my son, even though something good came from him, But he's such a tzaddik, and Hashem did so many good things. As if he would have sinned, that also is not excusable. And therefore, and we also see that even though, why should he die? Well, king makes a decree. King makes a decree that says that no one can eat anything, no one can do anything. Those decrees have a lot of force. So, they're able to put a guy to death. So let's see what happens. Pasuk Mem. Vayomer kol ha'am. So now he said, basically the next couple of psukim, it's not said clearly, but what's going on over here is we're going to draw lots. We're going to do a lottery and find out. Hashem will show us who the sinner is. So he says to all the Jewish people, Atem tiyu le'ever echad. Interesting how he decided, the way he decided to make the lottery. I mean, he could have, divided up into 12 tribes, and then after the tribes, we divide up into families and see what's wrong. He didn't do that. He said, all of you Jews are going to be on one side of the lottery, and me and Yonas and myself will be on the other side of the lottery. You know what? I don't know what possessed him to divide up the lottery that way. In other words, I guess he's saying, well, was it a sin of the people or a sin of the leadership? Maybe that's how he felt. Was it a sin of the people? Was it a sin of the leadership? In other words, he either felt it was somewhere amongst all the people there was a sin, and it was the lower people, or maybe it was a mistaken leadership. Could be, this is again his humility, where he's willing in the lottery to show that I could be very well responsible for what's going on, even though I don't know.
So in other words, he included himself in the lottery.
Him and his son, that's like the leadership.
So he included as
So he says it's either the leadership or it's the people. By Yomer Ha'am El Shol, and the people said to Shol, Hatov v'nachasei, do what's good in your eyes. Memal. By Yomer Shol El Hashem Elokei Yisrael. Okay, so Shol says to Hashem, the God of Israel, he says, Hava Samim. Hava Samim. Literally, that means, he's saying, bring truth. That was he's saying, Hashem, bring a truthful lottery. Please make the lottery, be a correct lottery. That it's not just bogus. I make it and I'm totally off board. Hashem, I want you to be involved in this. So Vayilaked Yonasan v'Shol. So the lottery fell on Yonasan and Shol. Va'am Yotzo, and the other people went. In other words, they were freed from the rest of the lottery. Okay, Manbeis. Vayomer Shol. So now Shol says, Hapilu beini uvein Yonasan b'ni. So let's draw a lottery between me and my son. Vayilaked Yonasan, and it fell on Yonasan. So Yonasan is the guilty party, and that's why Hashem didn't answer them. Mem Gimel. Vayomer Shol Yonasan. So Shol said to Yonasan, Hagidoli, tell me, Mel Sisa, what have you done? Vayagidol Yonasan. Yonasan said, now here's interesting. Now the question is, now how's Yonasan going to respond? He could be critical of his father now. Okay. On the other hand, he sees that Hashem has not answered them. If Hashem has not answered them, that's a very bad sign. And the lottery's fallen on Yonasan. So now Yonasan, is he going to, argue with the lottery? Try to excuse himself? Now remember, he has a lot of excuses, doesn't he? I didn't know. After all, it's not clear. Did you mean couldn't eat anything? Maybe a little bit. I was dying. He has a lot of excuses he could use. So you look at his honesty here, and this is an honesty that Hashem is showing that he should be learning from. Because we're coming up to the next chapter. The next chapter is a very, very sad chapter. The next chapter is Shaul's final fatal mistake. And in the final fatal mistake, when the Navi says he made a mistake, he excuses himself. He doesn't accept responsibility. And you could say, well, that's the way people are. Yeah, but you're going to see now in your son, your own son accepts responsibility when God says he's wrong. And he says, Vayomer, he says, Ta'om ta'amti biktseh hamata asher biyadi ma'at vash. Yes, I have surely tasted from the edge of my stick that was in my hand. I took a little bit of honey. And therefore he says, Hinenei amus, and therefore I should die. So the Malbim points out, this is his righteousness. He didn't try to excuse himself from all the excuses he could have had. Once he saw that the lottery fell on him, and Hashem says he is guilty, then Hashem says he is guilty. And that's it. Now, forget it. My father did something, maybe I felt to argue with my father. Again, maybe a mistake, maybe not a mistake, whatever. But if Hashem says I'm guilty, I have to argue with Hashem. Can't. So now's a major problem. Which story does this remind you of a little bit? Back in Sefer Shoftim. Yiftach. Remember what Yiftach said before he had to go to battle?
Oh, yeah.
He said, if I win this battle, the first thing that comes to me, I will give to you, Hashem. It's his daughter. Right?
So you're stuck with it.
So now you're stuck with it. And you'll see as well, this sounds a lot like Yaakov Avinu's big mistake when Lavan chased after him and says, why'd you steal my idols?
Yeah.
And what did Yaakov say? I'm so sure nobody stole your house. If anybody stole them, they shall surely die. So what did Shul say? Whoever did it shall surely die. And what eventually happened to Rachel? Interesting. Rachel dies. Ultimately, Rachel, why does she die? Because of Yaakov's curse. Even the curse of a tzaddik and condition must come true. Right? He never would have said it if he knew Rachel took. Rachel dies. How interesting. Shul really then came out and cursed his son. Because ultimately Yonason's going to die in a battle later on through the hands of the Plishtim. Right? And again, he's descendant of Rachel. So you see how, again, it's Rachel. Rachel, remember, Rachel is very modest. Very tznius. And if you're very tznius, what do you do if you're very tznius? You never tell anybody about the good things that you do. You never tell people about your righteousness. Like she wanted to take the idols away from her father, it was because it was a tzidkus. She didn't want anybody to know. That's her nature. Be very modest. You don't even have to tell your husband you're doing such a virtuous thing. True, modesty is a wonderful thing, but you have to know that there are other rules that you can't let the modesty interfere with. One is called shalom bayis. Right? So you say, it's not fair. Well, if you have a husband and you don't tell him what you're doing, that's a little bit too modest, perhaps. Okay, you didn't tell me you switched your sister to marry him. Okay, maybe that was a good idea, but you went and take the idols. Could cause a Chilul Hashem, maybe discuss it. So, the same idea, Shul, you want to say the one who transgressed shall surely die, think about it. You have to know, you can't be so sure. If you have such a modest family, if you're humble, and you probably raised Yonasan to be humble, how can you be so sure you know all the information and you're so quick to say people should die? Ultimately, this is where Yonasan dies from. It's from this curse. I mean, Yonasan did do an Aveira, did do a slight Aveira. For his level, it was an Aveira, criticizing his father. And then his father puts a curse on him. So, it can't be that goes away. It's going to have to linger and have some kind of an effect.
It's just a way for him to correct whatever happened. He didn't know why Hashem didn't answer anymore. So he's trying.
So now he knows why.
So that's the way to correct it, right?
Okay. So now the question: what's Shul going to do?
But Shul had no choice. He had to do that. He had to draw the lots to find out what the reason was.
He had to draw the lots. Did he have to say that the person would die?
But what else would he say?
I don't know. Well, let's find out. We'll get the person to do teshuva.
So
I'm sure he's pretty suspicious that the transgression was that somebody didn't fast.
Yeah.
In other words, the only thing he could have thought was wrong is that somebody didn't fast. He figured, I made a decree, must be somebody. And he said, must be somebody today sin. Now, who could sin while you're having a battle? There's no time to sin. The only sin that could have been is I said nobody could eat. Somebody must have eaten. So therefore, he shall surely die because it's a kingly decree.
The fact that people
and then he says, and even Yonasan, and even Yonasan. What? Yeah, the people sinned. They corrected.
Oh, okay.
He built it. He put the rock up. He says, "We're going to correct this up there right away."
That.
We corrected it.
Yeah.
Whatever I know, I'll take care of.
Right.
Right. So whatever I know, I'll take care of. So this you know. But this he doesn't know. So now he finds out. So now, what are you going to do now? You're going to play favorites now? Remember, there's a group there suspecting there's favoritism here. Shul saying, I've got no favoritism. Even if it's my own son, I will kill him. And now, it's your own son. So let's just finish up this little part. So what's Shul's response? Shul says, Ko yaseh Elohim v'ko yaseh. So shall Hashem do, so shall Hashem increase. Kimos tamus Yonasan. That Yonasan shall surely die. He's saying that's what has to happen. It's like an oath. Ko yaseh Elohim is like an oath. Okay? And he's saying, whatever's got to happen to him, that's what's got to happen to him. He's going to stick to his guns over here, and that Yonasan has to die. So will he or not? We will hang on to next week, and of course there's a lot of other issues over here. Clearly, there's a lot of questions over here. At the end of the day, Yonasan was a shogeg. At the end of the day, Yonasan didn't know. At the end of the day, would you say that he violated? So if that's the case, why does Hashem make the thing come on him? So we'll discuss all that in Mitzvah Hashem next week. Tomorrow.